Yeah, welcome back. Well, on Wednesday, the Nigeria Startup Bill was passed the third reading at the lower house, that's the House of Representatives. The news comes exactly a week after the bill was passed by the Senate and passed to the House of Representatives. With the passing of the third reading at the House of Reps, the bill has now completed its round at the National Assembly. A concurrent has been reached on the bill, and all that's left for the bill now is to become law is the president's assent. So what should we be doing now? What should the startup community be doing now? As I said earlier, we have Omori joining us in the studio here. Good morning, Omori. Good to have you. Happy New Month.
Happy New Month, Amy. Good to be here again.
Good to have you. So should I say congratulations? I know you've been on this and you're excited about it.
Yes, very excited, very excited. This is a landmark moment and landmark provision for startups. We couldn't be more excited. You know, the last time I was here, I said some jurisdictions have come on and Nigeria is late to the party. But good thing, we've crossed that bridge. We're in and fully geared up to get going.
Yeah, well, I remember we celebrated the PIA like this, but the implementation, so, you know, celebrating the passage while awaiting the president's assent is one thing, but the expected impact and the real impact is another.
Is another thing, yes. Well, you see, the beautiful thing about the startup bill, soon to become an act, it's an executive bill, so we don't envisage any back and forth from the executive arm. But what's even important is that this is the first time stakeholders will actively work with the regulators to create a law that will regulate them. So this is not like the practice where where you know, laws are more or less foisted on you and you have to work with them. But the stakeholders, the industry players were actively part of the process, from the drafting to the consultations to the defense at the National Assembly. So its implementation more or less will be a lot smoother, because even, you know, the main body that is established by the Act is the National Council on Digital Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And in that council, it will interest you to know that industry players, private sector industry players, are going to be a part of it, right? So it's not going to be us against them. It's going to be together we make something work. You know, so it's
so you have a lot of faith in the implementation of this.
Definitely,
since it's coming from within. But what are you guys doing now while awaiting the president's assent?
Well, what's even important while we await president assent is to push for state adoption. It's important that the startups live in the states. The states are the first interface, right? And so we're pushing to have all the states in Nigeria latch on, come on board. Some states have even taken the lead. Lagos State, Kaduna State, Yobe, Edo State have, you know, taken the lead to adopt the startup bill. In fact, Lagos State has even, through the Lagos State Innovation and Research Council, have been funding about 60 startups between $9,000 to $12,000 grants to get them going. So state adoption is very important because, you see, while the Act will provide for certain incentives at the federal level for startups, at the state level, there are also things that the states could do to enable these startups thrive.
Help me to paint the picture, make it more realistic. When you talk about the states domesticating it and adopting it. Okay, what does it mean, really? You mentioned Lagos State and Kano State. So does it mean that the state's executive or the lawmakers sit down with startups and discuss, or what exactly does it mean?
So the thing is, the states could decide to, I know Kaduna, for instance, has in the works a startup law of Kaduna State that is borrowing a leaf from the startup bill, right? Like I said, some of the key things that startups would get also come from the state level. You know, things, for instance, like payee are not for employees of startup companies. You could have certain incentives from that. You could have business premises permits, business premises taxes waived or reduced, from the state. You could also have the states create free enterprise zones for startups, So they could come with laws. They could also have through executive orders or executive implementations to look at the bill and decide to pick it. But what's important is that the states adopt the bill in either a form of a law or an executive order and contextualize its benefit for the startups in their states. And it's also, one way of also creating a competitive edge. So startups are innovative, they are fast, and they're also restless. They want the best place where they will get the best respite to give the best result and produce the best product.
I guess another thing that will also attract them will be the raw materials, the resources available.
Yes. For those that are in advanced development, advanced agricultural development, for instance, a state that provides access to some mechanized products, or that gives you land, or that gives you a free hand to do certain things. We must not forget that one of the most important things that startups face are regulatory bottlenecks. And the startup bill wants to remove these bottlenecks so that they can thrive. The states need to adopt the startup bill so that this removal will be holistic across the entire country.
I guess it's another way that the country can look forward to when we talk about non-oil exports.
Oh, yes.
Reducing the pressure on the naira, which is like top on the list of conversation now. But let's look at some of those, some parts. For instance, according to the bill, for a company to be named startup, it must be a registered limited liability company that has been in existence for not more than 10 years from the date of incorporation.
Yes.
Right. Is this easy for a startup to meet up with?
Oh, yes. So not more than, which means from 1 year, 0 day, to 10 years. You must be young. And the law knows that in the formative years, just like a child, you're crawling, you're trying to stand, sometimes you falter, the same way business is run. Right? And so within the first 10 years of your business, what the Startup Act is going to provide is some respite so that, the bones can get stronger, you can stand firm, and you can run and you can walk on your own. So it's easy. Incorporation has been simplified. And, another thing is that the Startup Bill is going to have, the Startup Act is going to enable a startup portal. So where startups, label startup, can access all the regulatory support they need. Right now, company registration has been simplified by the Corporate Affairs Commission. We must give them that credit. Yes, there's still some bottlenecks, but it's simplified.
Yeah, because I wanted to say, I know someone who is still, he's gone through the process, but I've been getting to the final end. There's still some...
Yes, there's still some bottlenecks, but we're not where we used to be.
Obviously.
Right?
Because now you can do it virtually.
You can do it virtually. In fact, since last year, hard copy certificates are no longer issued by the Corporate Affairs Commission. You file your registrations, everything is submitted online. You download your company incorporation documents online. There has been an integration to have your tax identification numbers inside your certificates. At the same time you're applying, you're getting that done. So what the startup portal is going to do is to make this wider. Issues like incorporation, issues like regulatory registrations. For fintech startups, for instance, you have SEC regulations, you have CBN regulations. Let's bring everything into one place where they can access. And even after accessing, post-registration formalities, post-registration support, troubleshooting, you have an access. You don't need to walk into a physical office. You log in your complaint, you dialogue with the relevant government agency, and they provide you the solution to your problem on the go.
So, one of the reasons why I brought up that 10 years was we have a lot, for instance, even now that ASU has been on strike, we did a little bit of background report on what the students have been doing. And you see a lot of them branching out into different areas. I know ICT is top on that list. Now, I'm looking at how to make it easier for this group of people who do not really have that backbone or background, you understand, to easily, I mean, we know that in the Western world, people do not have to finish school. We've heard of the people who have started great companies, you know, without certificates. You know, so can this help this group of people? If we're going to help them in education, can we help them in this area?
Well, luckily, to register a company in Nigeria, you don't need any educational qualification. You just need to have a means of identification. So that simplifies the process. The cost of registration in Nigeria is not also prohibitive. It's reasonable. There must be a benchmark of requirements. It cannot be free-falling, right? But what's important is that as soon as they're able to assess these basic registrations, a limited liability company, it's pretty straightforward. You know, there are no exorbitant share capital procedures or requirements, right? So the benchmark is fine for registration. And the reason for that is, you know, one of the things that becoming a labeled startup would do is that it's also going to put you in a better position to access funding. Government will fund you. There's a grant, you know, startup grant that is interest-free, that's warehoused by the Sovereign Investment Fund, right, that they can access. But even beyond that, venture capitalists can also fund startups, because a lot of startups are funded by venture capital. There are people who make it their business to fund viable startups, right? So once you come within the labeling, which is free, you're able to be in a position where you are sought after. Don't forget that Nigeria is also in the process of fully implementing the AFTA agreement, which makes Africa a single market. And so Africa is ready for business. Nigeria has to also play its role as the leader in the African entrepreneurial ecosystem. You have 200 million people, and that's data, right? So coming under an umbrella that enables you become attractive to funding. Because as a labeled startup, definitely venture capitalists will look for you. The government will also fund you. You will get certain incentives, right? You know, right now, beyond even state adoption, it's important that all the stakeholders, both the stakeholders, the founders, the funders, the government, you know, private sector come together. And this is a collaborative law. It's an act that was created by everyone who's going to be eating from the meal.
Yeah, I know that one of the high points of this is that it brings a platform for conversation and meeting between the regulators and the startups and all of that. Now, you of course, you've talked about states adoption, but who's going to be running it in those states? You were part of the secretariat. You are in the Nigerian Startup Bill Secretariat. Do you have like offices in every state where anyone who is interested, or do I just go online? Yes, I want to be part of it. I want to access the portal when it's available and stuff.
So as soon as the bill becomes an act, one of the important things that will be done would be the establishment of the National Council on Digital Entrepreneurship and Innovation that will now create the secretariat flowing from the law. And once the secretariat is set up, certain modalities will now be put in place. One of the most important things will be that the portal will be created where startups can now access and start the process once they meet the labeling documentary requirement. Like I said, it's free to be labeled. Once those are met. Now, at the state level, the states will also try, like we said, adopt, provide an environment just flowing from the example that the federal government has made, flowing from the example provided by the Act. They are able to also create things like this. Like I said, certain states are already leading the way. Lagos State has its Research and Innovation Council. Whether they will decide to convert that to be in sync with the act. But they have clearly said that they intend to adopt it and flow with the example provided by the act. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
There's still a lot to be done. The implementation phase is just as intense as the phase that's we're just coming off.
Yeah, well, at least we'll celebrate our wins.
Our wins, definitely.
I don't want to call it little wins
this
because
is a
going
big
through the
win.
lawmaker,
It's a big win for startups in Nigeria.
Exactly. That's why I didn't call it little wins. It's
it's a big win.
It's a big win. All right, thank you so much. We do really look forward to the implementation of it, and of course, feeling the impact in the economy. I think that's at the bottom of it, because we have enough laws, we have enough rules in the country.
SMEs are the backbone of our economy. Startups are going to be the next phase. We are trying to move from we're trying to move from an oil economy, into a non-oil economy, and these are one of the first apostles of that movement. And it's important that they get the support that they need to be able to move our economy forward. Tunisia, for instance, started the Startup Act. They enacted the Startup Act. They provided, a lot of support for startups, and the turnover has been immense. Their economy has improved. The startups that have been supported have done a lot. And even with the little support that exists today, look at what our startups are even doing.
All right, Maury, I know you're really passionate about this. But when we get the president's assent, we'll be back.
Yes,
and then when we get to the different stages of the state's adoption, we'll be back. So
thank you.
We do wish you the best. Maury Edogioware, member communications and strategy team at the Nigerian Startup Bill Secretariat, and we do wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
As you go about preaching this gospel. We'll take a break now. When we come back from that break, business and governance, the perspective of GTEx Global. That will be our conversation. To join us again, Amini John Mekwa. Oh no, this is Business Morning on Channels Television.